It lives in your kitchen, not locked away, not hidden, not marked with importance, just sitting there, quietly waiting, almost invisible, almost overlooked. You touch it almost every day, sometimes without even looking at it, sometimes while your mind is elsewhere. You reach for it out of habit, not intention, out of routine, not awareness. You use it without thinking, without questioning why, without noticing the power it quietly holds, without realizing that its purpose was never limited to flavoring your food or adding aroma. But this spice has been doing something else, something most people never pause to consider, something subtle, something quiet, something protective, something that acts long before you even notice a threat, long before sprays promised instant results, long before chemicals filled shelves with bold labels and warnings, long before safety became something you bought, instead of something you understood, nurtured, and created, before danger needed instructions, before protection came in plastic bottles, before homes relied on force instead of awareness. This spice was already there, working silently in the corners, on the shelves, on the surfaces, guarding without noise, resisting without aggression, invisible, unseen, yet relentless. This spice has been protecting homes for generations, not by attacking problems directly, not by confrontation, but by making problems uncomfortable, by turning their paths into something unwelcoming. And even now, despite its quiet service, most people still never notice. They pass by it every day, unaware of the silent shield it has always provided. Your home is not under attack loudly. There are no crashes in the night, no sudden chaos, no dramatic signs of intrusion, no alarms screaming for attention, no flashing lights, nothing obvious enough to make you pause. There are no warnings, no urgent signals telling you that something is wrong, no messages stamped in red that demand action, nothing that feels immediate, pressing, or unavoidable. Only patterns, patterns that move quietly, patterns that repeat themselves with a subtle, invisible rhythm, patterns that settle in, unnoticed, and eventually become familiar, patterns most people learn to tolerate, even when they should not. The ants that keep coming back. No matter how many times you wipe the surface clean, no matter how many sprays or powders you try, no matter how many times you tell yourself, it's probably nothing. It will go away on its own. The damp smell that never fully leaves. It fades for a moment, then slowly returns, creeping back in, as if it never really left at all, as if it had found a way to remain despite your best efforts. The corner you clean again and again. You scrub it. You dry it. You organize it. You move on. And yet somehow, it never truly stays clean. You think it's a cleaning problem. You think that with stronger effort, better products, more force, you can fix it. It's not. It's a protection problem. Because what isn't protected eventually becomes occupied. What you ignore, even slightly, will quietly settle in and make itself at home. And the solution you've been searching for, the one you assumed had to be bought, the one you thought required chemicals, sprays, or complex routines, has been sitting quietly in your kitchen all along, waiting, doing its work without noise, guarding silently, while you believed you had to fight the problem yourself. Body. Part 1. The invasion you don't see. Insects don't invade chaos. They don't rush into disorder or noise. They don't choose places filled with constant movement, disruption, or resistance. They avoid instability. They avoid environments that feel unpredictable or hostile. They invade comfort. Spaces that feel calm. Spaces that feel predictable. Spaces that feel undisturbed and settled. Spaces that signal safety without resistance. Places where nothing challenges their presence. Places where routine creates familiarity. Mold doesn't appear suddenly. It doesn't arrive overnight without warning or explanation. It doesn't explode into existence in a single moment. It grows slowly, patiently, quietly, almost politely. It grows in places where silence lasts too long. Corners that are forgotten because they never seem important. Surfaces that stay damp just a little longer than they should. Walls that don't fully dry. Floors that don't fully breathe. Areas that receive no attention. Because nothing seems wrong yet. Because there's no smell, no stain, no obvious sign demanding action. Bacteria doesn't fight its way in. It doesn't force entry. It doesn't break locks or smash doors. It doesn't announce its presence with alarms or warnings. It settles quietly, where attention fades, where routines stop, where cleaning becomes occasional instead of intentional, where care turns into habit, and habit turns into neglect. These things are not aggressive. They don't attack with intent. They don't move with anger or urgency. They don't need to. They are opportunistic. They wait. They observe. They study patterns. They take advantage of comfort. They thrive on predictability. They look for places that feel safe, places that feel ignored, places that feel permanent, places where no one thinks to look anymore. And most homes, without realizing it, provide exactly that kind of safety. Body, Part 2. How the spice really works. This spice doesn't kill aggressively. It doesn't rely on force or shock. It doesn't flood the space with harsh reactions or overpowering smells. It doesn't declare war. It doesn't turn your home into a battlefield. It disrupts quietly, almost invisibly, in ways you don't notice right away, in ways that don't demand attention, in ways that work beneath the surface. Its natural compounds interfere with insect trails, the invisible lines they trust without thinking, the silent maps they follow instinctively, paths laid down through repetition, paths built on certainty and routine. Where there was once direction, there is confusion. Where there was confidence, there is hesitation. Where movement was automatic, now there is doubt. What once felt like a clear path suddenly feels wrong, unreliable, unfamiliar, unsafe. The signals no longer make sense. The guidance no longer leads anywhere useful. The space no longer feels predictable. So they don't push forward. They don't explore further. They don't adapt or experiment. They don't try harder. They leave. In damp spaces, this spice works even more patiently, even more quietly. It absorbs and resists the moisture that mold depends on to survive. The subtle dampness, the lingering humidity, the barely noticeable wetness that feels harmless. Not by attacking growth directly, not by destroying what already exists, but by removing comfort at the source. It doesn't wait for stains to appear. It doesn't wait for dark spots or smells. It doesn't wait for damage to become visible. It acts long before anything looks wrong. It prevents comfort long before growth begins, before spores settle, before colonies form, before problems announce themselves. Bacteria avoids environments where survival requires effort, where balance is against it, where conditions demand resistance instead of ease, where staying alive feels inefficient. Remove ease, and bacteria doesn't argue. It doesn't fight back. It simply avoids the space altogether. And that's the secret. This spice doesn't fight. It doesn't chase problems away. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't rely on constant action. It changes the rules quietly. It shifts the environment just enough. It makes your home unwelcoming to what doesn't belong. And most of the time, that's all the protection you need. Body, Part 3, the deeper message. This isn't just about your home. It never was. It was never limited to walls, floors, or corners. The walls are only the surface, the visible layer, the place where the lesson becomes easy to see. This is about neglect, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't demand attention or trigger panic, the kind that feels harmless because it feels quiet. Neglect is never loud. It doesn't crash into your life. It doesn't break things all at once. It doesn't arrive with warnings or dramatic signs. It arrives quietly and stays unnoticed. It slips in through familiarity, through routine, through the assumption that nothing bad is happening. It's subtle, patient, persistent. It shows up in things you postpone, small tasks you delay because they seem unimportant, conversations you avoid because they feel inconvenient, decisions you keep pushing forward to someday. It lives in corners you stop checking, places you once cared about, but now pass by without looking, areas you assume are fine, because they've always been fine before. It settles into habits you promise you'll return to later, routines you slowly loosen, standards you slowly lower, attention you slowly withdraw. And protection is the opposite. Protection is awareness, not perfection, not control, not obsession. Awareness of small changes, awareness of subtle shifts, awareness when something feels slightly off, even if it hasn't caused damage yet. Awareness of early signs, the quiet signals most people ignore, the moments that don't feel urgent, but are quietly asking for attention. Awareness before problems feel comfortable enough to stay, before neglect settles in, before issues learn your patterns, before damage becomes normal. Protection lives in small actions done early, tiny corrections made without drama, simple effort applied before resistance builds. When effort still feels easy, when response still feels natural, when correction is still gentle. The same way this spice protects your space. Not by force, not by aggression, not by constant battle, but by presence, by awareness, by changing the conditions quietly, is the same way attention protects your life. Because what you notice early never has the chance to take over later. Look around your home. Really look. Slow down long enough to see what you usually pass by. Not just at the surface. Not just at what's obvious or easy to spot. See the corners, the edges, the spaces behind things. The places your eyes slide past without registering anymore. See the spaces you've stopped noticing. The areas that feel familiar enough to disappear from awareness. The spots you assume are fine because they've always been there. That recurring mess isn't stubborn. It isn't rebellious. It isn't some mysterious force working against you. It isn't testing your patience on purpose. It doesn't defy logic. It doesn't exist outside cause and effect. It isn't random. That returning problem isn't coincidence. It isn't bad luck. It isn't fate circling back around. It isn't punishment for doing something wrong. It is the result of what has been allowed to linger too long, of what stayed just beneath concern, of what never felt urgent enough to address. Something has been left unattended. Something small that didn't seem important at first. Something easy to overlook. Something has been ignored. Not deliberately, not maliciously, just quietly. Something has taken root. In the absence of care. In the space where attention faded. In the gap between, I'll handle it later, and never coming back. And sometimes, the most powerful protection isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It isn't aggressive. It isn't forceful. It isn't something you can spray, scrub, or chase away. The most powerful protection is presence. The act of noticing, of seeing before damage forms, of paying attention before problems feel settled. The small, deliberate, consistent attention. The kind that doesn't wait for emergencies. The kind that doesn't rely on reaction. The quiet vigilance. That keeps what matters safe. Before trouble ever arrives. If this changed the way you see your home, imagine what else you've been overlooking. Subscribe for more quiet truths, hidden lessons, and simple insights that protect you before problems ever arrive. Because the most dangerous threats are never the loud ones. They're the ones that feel familiar,